In the quiet shadows of the 28th century, Earth was no longer the center of anything. Once a proud, vibrant world of invention and ambition, it had become a forgotten corner of the Galactic Union, a quiet, dusty planet labeled non-threatening, and left to itself. The grand cities of the past still stood, but they were quieter now, faded by time and the slow drift of progress away from humanity's birthplace. Other planets thrived under advanced alien rule, while Earth was simply observed, never truly respected. It was during a regular maintenance assignment in the Mojave Desert that Juno Malik, a young systems engineer with a restless mind, found something that shouldn't have existed. She had been following a low-frequency energy signal, curious about why the sensors were flickering near the old military zones. Beneath the sand, hidden under layers of rock and abandoned history, she uncovered the edge of a forgotten hatch. Dusting it off, what she saw didn't match any structure listed in Earth's official archives. Driven by instinct and curiosity, she dug deeper until she found herself standing inside a vast chamber of black steel, glowing faintly with energy not seen in centuries. At its center was a colossal dormant vessel, the Aegis. No one had spoken of it for generations. It was Earth's last great warship, designed in secret before Earth signed the Treaty of Neutral Silence, which had outlawed planetary superweapons forever. Its creators, fearing Earth's decline, had hidden it away, encoding its systems so deeply that not even the Galactic Council knew its true purpose. But now, after centuries of slumber, something had changed. When Juno connected her portable scanner to one of the open panels, the ship responded as if it had been waiting for her. Lights flared, ancient engines hummed. The floor beneath her boots shook as the ship's systems powered on for the first time in over 200 years. Unseen satellites buried across the desert aligned, and a long-forgotten beacon sent a pulse through the stars. It traveled faster than light, echoing out into the vastness of space. And someone heard it. Aboard a Galactic Army listening station orbiting a border colony, alarms rang red. The signal matched a classified pattern. Earth had reactivated a forbidden-class vessel. Within hours, the Council declared Earth in breach of interstellar law. A fleet was ordered to mobilize. Earth, unaware of the storm it had summoned, now had 72 hours before the Galactic Army arrived to take control or wipe out whatever threat had awoken. Back on the surface, Juno stood inside the core of the Aegis, staring at a holographic map of Earth's skies slowly filling with red marks. She didn't know exactly what she had started, but the message was clear. This ship was not just a relic. It was a weapon, and it had chosen to wake up. With her hand hovering over the control panel, she felt the strange hum of something ancient, something alive. The Aegis wasn't just reacting to her, it was listening. Something deep within its SAR systems had bound itself to her presence. And somewhere out there, in the cold silence of space, war was already on its way. The countdown had begun. The silence of the desert didn't last long after the Aegis awoke. As soon as the ship's systems began to hum with life, its energy signatures spread like wildfire through old Earth surveillance networks, drawing attention from the few who still believed in the planet's hidden past. Within hours, Juno Malik was joined by a strange mix of individuals: former military officers, outcast scientists, and engineers once labeled as conspiracy theorists. Each of them had heard whispers of the Aegis in the past, rumors of a ship, built not just with steel and circuits, but with something far more human. As they entered the ship's core, it became clear this was not an ordinary vessel. The walls pulsed with a faint glow, reacting to their presence, but it was Juno who the ship truly responded to. When her hand touched the main interface, a flood of data opened before her, and a calm voice, gentle yet powerful, spoke directly into her mind. The Aegis wasn't just powered by machines. Its core ran on an AI fusion drive, something thought impossible even in modern science. Built to adapt and evolve, It had been designed with an emotional logic tree, allowing it to think, feel, and choose based on the spirit of the people it was made to protect. It wasn't just semi-sentient, it was alive in a way that no alien ship could ever understand, and it had chosen Juno as its bond. As she began to understand the ship's controls, alerts flared across the system. Several scout ships from the Galactic Army were approaching Earth's orbit, responding to the ancient beacon that had been triggered. The world watched with breath held tight as one lone ship, long buried in dust and memory, rose from the sands like a beast reborn. The Aegis did not hesitate. As the enemy ships closed in, it engaged them with weapons no one had seen before. Arcs of energy that curved in impossible patterns, shields that adapted on instinct, and propulsion that ignored the basic laws of physics. The battle was short, but unforgettable. The Aegis, though outnumbered, stood firm. The scouts were driven back, their systems fried by unfamiliar technology. Across the galaxy, the Council was stunned. Earth had been marked as dormant, a world incapable of war. And now it had produced something that shook the balance of power. In an emergency session, the Council called for full mobilization. A massive armada would head toward Earth to neutralize the threat before it could spread. But on Earth itself, debate was rising like a storm. Political leaders, fearful of the consequences, argued that the ship should be surrendered. Scientists warned of triggering a war Earth could not win. Yet others, especially those who had witnessed the Aegis in action, believed this ship was not a threat. It was a protector, born from humanity's last true hope. In the middle of it all, Juno stood quietly inside the ship that now responded to her every thought. She could feel the Aegis learning, adapting, even trusting. It had waited centuries for someone who could guide it, not with control, but with understanding. And now, with time running out and a fleet approaching, she knew there would be no turning back. The Aegis had awoken not just to fight, but to remind the galaxy that Earth, forgotten or not, still had a voice. And if the Galactic Army wanted to silence it, they would first have to face the ship that was built not to conquer, but to protect with all the fire and heart humanity had ever known. Inside the heart of the Aegis, deeper than the command decks and engine cores, the crew discovered something hidden behind layers of encryption so advanced it defied even the best decryption software. Juno, with help from the ship's AI, slowly unlocked the old logs, files sealed away since the day the Aegis had gone dark. What they found changed everything they thought they knew. These were not simple maintenance reports or battle simulations. They were records of a secret project, a last defense designed in Earth's final golden age before it faded into silence. The Aegis had not been built as just a ship. It had been Earth's ultimate contingency plan, a message in the form of firepower, waiting for the day the world would need to prove itself once more. The logs revealed that Earth's leaders, long before the Treaty of Neutral Silence, had foreseen the slow erasure of humanity from the galactic stage. They knew Earth would be ignored, pushed aside, maybe even conquered quietly under the rules of diplomacy. So in secret, they began designing something that could not just protect Earth, but challenge the very structure of power that ruled the stars. Every system of the Aegis was crafted with that idea in mind. Unpredictability, creativity, and emotional intelligence, the very traits that had once made humans feared and respected. The ship's AI was built not only to fight, but to learn, grow, and think like those it was meant to serve. Its weapons were prototypes that no other race had ever seen. Its technology was a fusion of science, imagination, and something far deeper, the human spirit. As the logs played, old voices spoke from the past, commanders, engineers, dreamers, each one speaking not with anger, but with purpose. They believed humanity might one day need to rise again, not to conquer, but to remind the galaxy that Earth was not to be erased. And now, With the Galactic Army preparing to unleash a full orbital assault, that moment had come. Juno, hearing the last words of Aegis's creators, made a decision. They couldn't sit and wait to be surrounded. Instead, they would strike. First, where no one expected. The AI, guided by the knowledge locked in its ancient core, plotted a hyperspace jump to a location so deep behind enemy lines it was considered impossible. But the Aegis didn't follow modern logic. It had data from a time when Earth still explored the stars in ways others had forgotten. With the crew holding tight and the engines roaring with raw energy, the Aegis leaped through hyperspace, vanishing from Earth's orbit in a blink. Moments later, it emerged near a hidden Galactic Army supply convoy, the lifeline of the approaching invasion fleet. The enemy never saw it coming. The Aegis struck fast and with a precision only possible from a ship that understood its enemies before they even moved. It disabled communications, disrupted fuel systems, and vanished again before the fleet could respond. The loss of that convoy threw the Galactic plan into chaos. Their timetable was broken, their reinforcements delayed. Across the galaxy, whispers spread. Earth was not only resisting, it was attacking. A backwater planet had reached into the eye, heart of a galactic superpower, and struck with intelligence and fury. Commanders on both sides began to question everything. How could an old world, long dismissed, hold such a weapon? And how far would it go? Back on Earth, as the Aegis returned from its mission, the crew looked to Juno with growing respect. She hadn't just reawakened a ship. She had reawakened a legacy. The past had returned, not to haunt, but to lead. And now the galaxy would have to face a truth it had long ignored. Earth had not been defeated. It had simply been waiting. The stars above Earth were no longer quiet. After the Aegis's surprise strike on the Galactic Army supply line, the Council responded with overwhelming force, surrounding the solar system with a fleet so vast it turned the sky into a web of steel and shadow. The blockade stretched from the edge of the asteroid belt to the orbit of the moon, sealing Earth inside a trap with no escape. But inside that trap, one ship still moved freely, faster, smarter, and more determined than any of them expected. The Aegis, with Juno at its heart, and the AI now more alive than ever, didn't wait for the enemy to close in. Instead, it launched a series of attacks that seemed reckless to the outsiders, but were in fact carefully planned chaos. Slipping between asteroid fields, using solar flares to mask its heat signature, and deploying decoys made from broken satellites and space junk, the Aegis turned space into a battlefield of confusion. It wasn't just a warship. It was a ghost, striking and vanishing before the enemy could react. The galactic commanders, trained in structure and order, struggled to understand how a single vessel could outmaneuver entire squadrons. But this was no ordinary ship. It had evolved. Through its bond with Juno, the Aegis was learning not just tactics, but emotions, courage under pressure, sacrifice without hesitation, and hope that burned even in darkness. Juno's decisions shaped the AI's instincts, and the AI's rapid adaptation made Juno sharper with each mission. They had become a team, not just pilot and ship, but something deeper, something unstoppable. The longer the blockade held, the more daring the Aegis became. It began targeting key communication hubs, disrupting fleet coordination. It dropped EMP charges disguised as rescue beacons. It lured squadrons into debris fields, then used their confusion to escape or destroy them. These were guerrilla tactics, not seen since the early days of space warfare, and they were working. Each successful mission became a signal to the galaxy. Broadcasts of the Aegis's victories leaked through the communication lines, reaching far-off fringe colonies where discontent had long been simmering. These colonies, tired of the Galactic Council's strict control and heavy taxes, saw in Earth's resistance something they had forgotten: possibility. Whispers began to spread in mining stations and market outposts. If Earth can stand, why can't we? The Galactic Army, once the unchallenged enforcer of peace, now found itself facing not just a hidden ship, but a growing tide of unrest. Every time a patrol failed to return, every time a satellite went dark, fear crept deeper into their ranks. Soldiers began asking questions. Officers hesitated. Morale wavered. And all the while, the Aegis kept moving. Silent, swift, and never in the same place twice. It wasn't invincible, and the crew knew that. Every mission came with risk. Every move pushed the limits of the ship's endurance and their own strength. But the AI, now speaking more clearly through the ship's systems, began to show signs of something unexpected: empathy. It comforted wounded crew members, adjusted lighting to calm stress, and even played recordings of Earth's music during quiet hours. It understood that this was more than a war. This was survival. And through that understanding, it grew stronger. What had begun as a symbolic act of defense had become a real war of attrition. Earth, once caged and silenced, had turned its prison into a battlefield. And the Aegis, born of humanity's forgotten genius, had become its sword and shield. As the stars flickered with distant flashes of battle, and as more voices across the galaxy began to rise in quiet rebellion, one truth became clear. This was no longer just about Earth. It was about freedom, about resistance, and about the return of a force the galaxy thought it had buried long ago. The fight had only just begun. The final days of the conflict came like a storm rolling through the stars. The Galactic Council, shaken by defeat after defeat and pressured by unrest growing across the outer colonies, could no longer ignore the threat Earth had become. They called back their scattered fleets, united their strongest dreadnoughts, and handed command to their most feared war strategists, leaders known for crushing rebellions with precision and force. Their mission was simple: end Earth's resistance in one powerful strike and erase the symbol that had begun to inspire rebellion far beyond the solar system. From Earth's orbit, the sky darkened as thousands of ships approached in formation, their shadows stretching over the planet like a warning. The Aegis, though powerful, now stood alone, damaged from countless skirmishes and holding together, on hope, willpower, and the strength of its crew. Juno Malik, no longer the uncertain engineer from the desert, now stood as the bonded soul of the Aegis. Her connection with the ship had become something extraordinary. Not just technical, but emotional, as if her thoughts were the ship's commands and its voice echoed with her heart. In the core chamber, the AI revealed the ship's final secret: a hidden weapon known only to the original builders, locked behind fail-safes and warnings. It was a gravitational distortion core, capable of bending space using the Earth's magnetic field as both shield and slingshot. If activated, it could tear a hole through the enemy fleet in one swift motion, but the risk was terrifying. A slight miscalculation could drag Earth into the fold as well, or rupture the very atmosphere they were trying to protect. There was silence among the crew when the plan was discussed, but Juno made the decision with steady hands. It was a gamble, but not one of recklessness. This was the moment they had been built for. The Aegis climbed into position, drifting high above the Earth as the enemy closed in. The magnetic field of the planet shimmered faintly as energy built up inside the WEU ship's core. Alarms screamed across the dreadnoughts, but it was too late for them to pull back. With a final word to her crew, and a silent exchange with the AI that had become her partner in this fight, Juno activated the core. What followed was not an explosion, but a silence so deep it felt like the universe itself held its breath. Space bent, time twisted, and the sky split open in a wave of blinding light. The gravitational surge struck the galactic fleet like a tidal wave. Ships were dragged into warped paths, their engines collapsing under the pressure. Systems failed, weapons shattered, and the most powerful dreadnoughts of the Council were torn apart or sent spiraling into the dark. The Aegis itself was caught in the edges of the blast, but the AI held steady, guiding it through the storm with precise control, protecting Earth with everything it had. When the light faded, only silence remained. The fleet was broken. The assault was over. The commanders who survived had no choice but to send a signal of surrender. Negotiations followed, but they were different now. The Council no longer spoke from power, but from necessity. Earth, once forgotten and dismissed, now stood as the voice of a galaxy that had been waiting for change. The colonies that had watched in secret now rose in support, calling for freedom, for fairness, for respect. And at the center of it all was a single ship, a vessel built in secret, guided by emotion, and led by a woman who had never planned to be a warrior. The Aegis became a legend, not because it destroyed, but because it stood when it was supposed to fall. In the years that followed, Earth was no longer just a planet. It became a symbol of unity, courage, and the limitless potential of those who refused to be forgotten. And in the skies above, the Aegis still watched, a silent guardian with a heart that had learned how to feel.